Friends, in this video, I'm going to cover the end game for all four parties in this war. That is the US, Israel, Gulf Arab states and Iran. But before I do that, kindly please like and subscribe the videos and share any short or long video that you like with your friends. Iran and Iran's government have revealed their hand. That is, the clergy and the IRGC have both chosen Mujtaba Khamenei. Iran and Iran's government have revealed their hand. That is, both the IRGC and the clergy and the judiciary have chosen, through the assembly of experts, Mujtaba Khamenei, who is the son of the former Ayatollah Khamenei. This reveals a continuation of policies because Mujtaba Khamenei was a hardliner. His views were not only in alignment with his father, but he too was close to the IRGC because he had served in the IRGC during the Iran-Iraq war. He was close to the clergy also because he himself is a qualified Ayatollah. And in this moment of extreme danger and stress, the various components of the government have chosen a man who is familiar both with the system, with the security architecture, with the foreign relations, rather than somebody new who would have to learn the ropes. This means the IRGC, the army, the Basij, the military factions which constitute over 1 million members, and the clergy and the bureaucracy judiciary have chosen resistance and continuation. It's clear that they will fight to the end. And it appears that the second party, that is Israel, which has announced that it will assassinate any successor to the former leader because it basically wants an end to the regime. It believes that the regime continuation, or in fact any kind of government continuation, would constitute a threat to it, both in terms of missiles or in terms of a future nuclear program, or just in terms of sheer continuation of a centralized government and power. So you can see that they have now been destroying the infrastructure of the state. They not only have destroyed the government buildings, the police stations, but also stadiums, hospitals, fuel depots. Israel would prefer chaos, the kind of chaos that existed in Libya, in Syria. In any state where order has collapsed, where centralized authority has collapsed, there exists a power vacuum. When there's a power vacuum, different factions and different ethnicities try to fill this in. Iran too has many ethnicities. Ethnic Persians are just about 55% of the population. The rest are different kinds of minorities, Azaris, Balochis, Marsh Arabs, Kurds, etc. And apart from that, when the centralized leadership is destroyed, even within the regime, even within the army, the Basij, the IRGC factions can emerge and civil war can result. This is certainly not in the interest of the Gulf Arab states, who are the third party, and it's not in the interest of the United States as well. At the beginning of this conflict, the interests of the United States and Israel were combined. That is, they both wanted a reduction in the power of the Iranian state, an end to its nuclear program, an end to its missiles, or support for proxies. But it's not in the interest of the United States that there is chaos here, nor of the Arab states surrounding Iran. Because chaos would not only mean an increase in extremism or terrorism, but it would also mean that the passage of oil through the Persian Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz would be endangered. Different factions, somebody even with an RPG could blow up a tanker. Somebody with a shoulder-fired missile can bring down an aircraft, so air travel will come to an end. It would lead to a destruction of these Gulf economies, which are based on tourism, on oil exports. Moreover, the Gulf Arab states are also very vulnerable. In fact, that is why they tried to dissuade the United States from attacking. False rumors have been put in the last week that Saudi Arabia was putting pressure on the US to attack, but that's not true at all. In fact, Bernard Heckel, Princeton professor who's quite close to Mohammed bin Salman, he exchanges WhatsApp messages with him, has said that Mohammed bin Salman did call President Trump thrice, but it was to prevent the conflict. In fact, from 2019 itself, when the Iranians had attacked the oil infrastructure in Saudi, an oil separation plant, which led to halving of the oil output, Mohammed bin Salman had decided that he wants to focus on the internal economic development of Saudi Arabia, its movement away from oil. So in 2023, he agreed to the rapprochement with Iran that had been arranged by China. He has tried to dissuade even Mohammed bin Zayed, the ruler of UAE, but he's a more extreme character. He considers any kind of Islamist to be his mortal enemy, and so he's been interfering everywhere. Whereas Mohammed bin Salman is a pragmatic guy. He feels that if peace can be maintained even through an Islamist, that's fine. So whether it is Syria or Yemen or Sudan, he's been willing to cut deals, and he's been very angry with UAE because they've been interfering in all of these regions, which are creating insecurity all around Saudi Arabia. But even the UAE or Qatar, etc., as I explained, don't want chaos in Iran because they know it will be the ruination of their countries and their economies. Oil production, air travel, tourism, everything has completely shut down in the past few days. And they know that if this continues, it will not only be the end of their oil income, but an end to their global reputations as destinations for tourism, sporting events, service industries, and real estate establishments. Israel, on the other hand, doesn't mind this. That is, if there is no centralized government in Iran, that means no future Iranian government can also ever be a threat to Israel's plans for Greater Israel. And if the Gulf Arab states get destroyed in the process, that's also fine, because then the Palestinians or even the Syrians or even the Lebanese will have no future financiers left. But this destruction of the Gulf is not in the benefit of President Trump or the United States, because oil is already at $116 per barrel. If it goes any further, already at this level itself, Trump is having political difficulties. I mean, this war was not popular. Neither in the United States, as I explained, only 60%, not internally in the United States, as I explained earlier, 60% of Americans were opposed to this war. Within Trump's own MAGA base, there are people like Tucker Carlson, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and a large section which are opposed to this war. About 8 Americans have already died. God knows how many more. Trump would have ideally liked this war to be over within 3 to 4 days. That's why when the conflict began, he was predicting a collapse of the government. He urged the Iranian public to rise up, or the installation of a strong man like in Venezuela who he could cut deals with. When that didn't work out, he wanted the Kurds to start an insurgency. But the Kurds are very few in number, 3,000, 4,000. They're not enough for such a large country of 90 million, 3 times the size of Iraq. The Kurds themselves have a history of being betrayed by the United States. They didn't want to get involved in this. There was also some disagreement within the White House about such a strategy. Many Iranians also protested, that is, diaspora Iranians. They don't want a fragmentation of their country. And when the Kurds themselves didn't agree, Trump stepped back from that. Trump does not have the stomach for a long fight. At some point, he's going to pull the plug. Of course, the Israelis and the Israel lobby in Washington is going to try to keep him in the fight because Israel doesn't have the capacity to keep fighting for a long time. It can fight for a few weeks, but it doesn't have the capacity to keep bombing Iran beyond that. So it will be worth seeing at what point the Americans and the Israelis diverge. That doesn't mean they'll become enemies. They still are very close. And it's possible that they might be able to pressurize Trump into staying in the game at, of course, a huge cost to himself. But that would only result in the further ruination of Iran and the greater possibility of civil war or chaos emerging. So the likely chances are that Trump will pull the plug soon. Iran, as I've explained, has made up its mind. The IRGC is going to fight to the end. And it's not easy to kill the leadership, because if it was so easy, the Israelis would have killed Ali Larijani by now. Ali Larijani is the guy who's effectively running the army and the country. If they were able to kill Ayatollah Khamenei, it was because he wanted to die. It's quite clear now that he wanted himself to be martyred and remain as a symbol for the revolution. So for Iran, there are only 2 possibilities. Either the regime survives, either under Mujtaba Khamenei or Larijani or some other leader in case they are killed. If the pressure and the bombing is very intense and continues for a long time, then chaos and civil war. There is no smooth transition to some other kind of government or a democracy emerging. This much is clear. So as I had said once before, Karl von Clausewitz, the 18th century Prussian strategist, was right. You can choose to start a war, but where it goes, when it ends, and who wins is not in your hand, even if you are a superpower. So keep watching, and until next time, see you.